Hey y'all, thanks so much for joining us today at The Heart. My name is Dominic Insenius. I'm the leader of this church community, and I'm so grateful that you have taken some time out of your day in your journey of faith to be a part of what God is doing here in the city of San Marcos. We have a saying around here, you don't have to go to church here to go to church here, and that means you are welcome to enjoy this message from your tablet, phone, or computer, wherever you're watching it on. Big things can happen when we expect God to move. So I pray today that God would speak to you through this message. The message today can encourage you and empower you to move throughout your week and what's next in your life. So enjoy this message.
We're in week 2 of a series we just started on Easter Sunday. What a blast that was. And we're calling it Spiritual Amnesia. And what we want to do when we start a new series, we like to take some time to dig into a particular topic. And for this, we like the idea of this idea of amnesia. And I don't mean it to exploit the actual disease that people have, but it's this idea of us forgetting the things that we have done, that have happened, or the importance of remembering, right? Last week for Easter, we started the series off with the idea of why do we take time to remember? There's a few things that we do in the Christian world to remember. Sometimes we take communion, right? I don't know if you've ever taken communion before, and even if you haven't, you've probably seen movies where they have. And with communion, the whole point is to remember what Jesus did, right? And then we have on Easter Sunday, we take time to remember that Jesus rose from the dead. Christmas time, we take time to remember the birth of Jesus. So we have all these different things that we use to remember. And it got me thinking, how can we, in our journey of faith, no matter where you are in your journey of faith, okay? If you've been Christian for as long as you can remember, or you just decided you wanted to be Christian last week, or you're not at all and you're just checking things out, wherever you are on your journey of faith, we've had this life that we have led. And along this life, what things do we remember and what things do we forget? And it got me thinking, like, I think I forget a lot more than I remember. And I'm the kind of person, I love to reflect on what has happened. I love to reflect on what has done. And by reflect, of course, I mean dwell and stress myself out. But it sounds better if I say reflect. So I like to reflect on what has happened in my past and really overthink it. Anybody else? Who are my overthinkers out there? Okay, hey, thank you. Wow. Way to not overthink it and raise your hand right away. Look at you. That is growth. Yeah, so I started thinking about some of the things in my life that I tend to forget along the way. Think like, in my life, I've had a few different jobs. In a sales job, you know what they say in a sales job, that you're only as good as your last sale, right? Oh, you had a big sale, big whoop. What's next month, right? There's always something next. There's a next goal. There's a next thing to do. And there's not necessarily wrong with looking for the next thing to do, the next goal to accomplish, the next thing to achieve. But we talked last week about letting yourself be in the present moment. But as we look forward, that's how we are. Right? Life is coming at us. Things are coming towards us. We're going to be doing things. And so we want to look forward. You want to look ahead. But like I said last week, we don't want to forget to be here in this moment, present, enjoying what we have, embracing what's in front of us. But at the same time, as we look forward, we look ahead, we can sometimes easily lose track of what has happened. I think an easy example of this, for me anyway, is anybody like a road trip? I love a road trip. Road snacks. Did you know road snack calories do not count? Did you know that? They do not. Give me a big old bag of sunflower seeds, Then I'll do sunflower seed math. Like if I do 7 sunflower seeds per 2 miles, every 2 miles, I'll be there in 4 hours. That's sunflower seed math. I love a good road trip. And sometimes on a road trip, you ever notice this, where it seems like it always takes longer to get back than it does to get there? Anybody experience that? Or do you experience it the other way? Send me an email. Let me know. But there's something that we always like to ask, or maybe some of you do. Maybe some of you are the person that asks this question. What's the question that you ask on a road trip? Does anybody know? Are we there yet? Shut up. Are we there yet, right? We want to know. Are we there? Are we close? Looking for signs? Are we almost there? And sometimes if we're not quite there, we'll say we're almost there. We'll get a little bit frustrated. We're not there yet? We're still driving? We're still on this trip, and we can easily forget how much ground we have covered. You see what I'm saying? We can forget how much ground we've covered because all we can see is what we have left that we haven't done. And the same thing can happen with our faith. The same thing can happen with our relationships. The same thing can happen with our parenting, with our jobs, with our mental health, with our emotional health. All we can see is what we haven't done yet. All we can see is where we aren't there yet. And we can easily forget all the ground that we have covered, all the work that we have put in, all the miles that we have already put in to get where we are now. But we're not satisfied with where we are now because we're not there yet. And we can forget. And that's the whole idea I want to explore in this series is don't let yourself forget. Because you will. Because there's always more to come. There's always something next. Tomorrow's coming. Monday's coming. And then next Monday's coming after that. And you'll never guess what happens 7 days after that. It's Monday. I promise. So it'll be easy. It's natural to forget. That's why we have to intentionally remember. It reminds me of a story that I looked up this week from the Bible. It's actually in the book of Joshua. And if you're not a big history buff, which I am not, I had to look it up. Joshua is a person that led the Israelites. Maybe you've seen the movie where Moses, let my people go, right? And he takes them to the Red Sea, and the Red Sea splits, and the Egyptians are chasing them. They say, you can't leave. And they're like, oh, yes, we can. And they leave. God splits the Red Sea, miracle. People walk through it. Hundreds of thousands of Israelites walk through the Red Sea to safety or to the other side. I was joking with somebody this morning. I was like, why don't they just walk around? God's like, watch this. This is going to be a good one. So later, after Moses, you have to read the story. Moses got in trouble with God. God's like, that's it. You'll never see the promised land ever. But Joshua, the one who led the Israelites afterwards, says, we're going to see the promised land. And there was a battle they had to fight. And they walk to this river because they need to go to this other land to fight this battle. And they walk up to this river. And the river's wide. It's deep. At this particular time, I was looking it up. It can be up to 90 feet, 90 meters maybe. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're impressed more with, that's how wide it is. And it said it was up to 12 to 15 feet deep. And what would happen is there was a certain tribe, a certain group of Israelites that would carry the Ark of the Covenant. And if you don't know what that is, that's where the tablets that Moses wrote the Ten Commandments, they would carry those in the Ark of the Covenant, this covenant between God and God's people. And they would carry that around. In certain traditions in the Jewish culture, that's where God's presence would be. So they would carry it around for important battles, so that God would be there with them in this battle. So they're walking up. They walk up to the river. They step into the river. And as they step into the river with the Ark of the Covenant, with this thing, the river stops. And they walk across the river. Now here's what I want to pick up in this story. Watch this. This is chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. We will use these stones. Okay, so once they're all across, they wanted to build a memorial because they didn't want to forget. Because they probably know, they even knew back then, what we know now is that we can forget. So they wanted to build a monument, a little memorial. And they took 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. And they were going to build a memorial. They said, we will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? And then you can tell them, they remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. Now, I'm not saying that you need to build a monument in your backyard for everything that happens in your life. What I am saying is I want you to take time to remember what God has done in your life. Not that there's not more that you need him to do or that you need help with. But I think we can forget some of the things that God has done because of how far we've come. On those road trips that I take, if it's let's say it's a road trip for a couple hours, that first 30, 40 minutes, it seems easy. It's that last 30, 40 minutes, I'm like, okay, where are we at? But I can forget how far I've come. I can forget what I've seen along the way because all I'm seeing is what's in front of me right now. And I want to, and this is what I want for you, I want to remember what God has done in my life. And to be honest, it's fun. It's fun to think back even now in this very moment of thinking back of some of the things that God has done, where God has altered my faith, where the direction of who I thought I was going to be or who I thought I was going to become changed, and how I like that person even more. Prayers that I have prayed that have not come to pass, and prayers that I have prayed that have come to pass, and how each of those strengthened my faith. It's incredible to think of some of the things that God has done, and that's just in my life. That's just what I am seeing. I wonder if you took a moment to think through something that you know that God has done in your life. And this isn't a thing about you should feel guilty if you forget, or it's not about that. It's not about you should remember or feel bad. But it's about taking time to intentionally remember those times. I wrote something down for you. I want to read it for you. When you remember what God has done, it brings hope for what is to come. If you take the time to remember what God has done, there's something special. And there's a song that we sing every now and then. I forget the title. Is it called Do It Again? Asking in the back. Yep. God. It's a song called Do It Again. This whole idea of if we've seen God move, he can do it again. If we've experienced the things that God has done in our life, he could do it again. It can happen again. Why can't it? I have seen God do things in people's life that is it's truly miraculous. And it lets me think, it lets me hope. If that is possible, why not for my situation? Why not for my relationships? Why not for my growth? Why not for my faith? When we can remind ourselves of what God has done in our life, then it gives us hope for what's to come, hope for the future. I love that God is a God of hope. Hope for what can be. Maybe you need a little bit of hope today, a little bit of hope. Another thing I wrote down for you is this. Don't let what you lack today. Don't let what you lack today blind you from the growth you've had. I think it's easy, at least for me, and maybe you're not exactly like me, it's easy for me to think about the things I don't have. To think about the things that I really want that I don't have yet. It's that whole idea, right, of are we there yet? Yeah, we've traveled 7 hours of this 8-hour road trip, but we're just not there yet. And I really wanted to be there. You feel that? You hear what I'm saying? Where in your life are you thinking, I just really want to be there? I'm not quite there yet. Maybe I should have called this message, Are We There Yet? Right? We're not quite there. This is where I want to be. I want to be right over there, and I'm almost there. And what a waste of time, because I'm not quite there yet. But if you looked behind you, you would see all of the miles that you've covered to be where you are right now. You would see all of the growth that you've put in to your mental health, to your emotional health, to your spiritual health, to your relationships, to your parenting, whatever it is. You put in all of this, but you forget about it because you're not quite there yet. That's easy for me to do. I don't know how easy that is for you. And so what if we were to say, yeah, we're not quite there yet, but look how far I've come. Can you let yourself be proud of yourself for 1 minute for how far you've come? I was talking to my therapist the other day. I don't know if you all do therapy. I highly recommend it. And she asked me if I was proud of myself for some progress that I've made. And I really had a problem with that. I was like, I don't know. She's like, you can't be proud of yourself. And I was like, I don't think so. She's like, we should talk about that. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I don't want to talk about it. What if you could look at the progress that you've made and say, maybe I'm not quite where I want to be, but just because I'm not where I want to be doesn't mean that I haven't made all of this progress. Again, we're going to put this up on the screen. Don't let what you lack today blind you from the growth that you've had. Just because you're not there yet, don't let that blind you from how far you've come. Because all of this that's behind you is what's giving you the momentum forward. All of this that's behind you is what's guiding your direction. It was interesting this week, kind of digging into this idea of forgetting, remembering. And all these things came up and I didn't feel bad. I was tempted to. I was tempted to feel bad about it. I was tempted to feel a little bit guilty. I kind of live in that space anyway. I'm like looking for things to feel guilty about. But I was taking the time to remember. I was like, okay, I'm really going to sit down and think about this. Let me remember some of the things that God has done. And I don't just mean what God has done for me. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I don't mean the times where God was like a genie for me, right? Like I wanted this and God gave it to me. That's not what I mean. I mean the times when I really leaned on God during a situation. Where I said, no matter what the outcome of this is going to be, I'm going to choose to trust God, to pray to God, to believe God for this, to believe God for what's to come, not forgetting what I want. Not so I can have what I want, but so I can be in constant relationship with God throughout it. And all these things started to come up. I just completely forgot. I used to have this like thing with my heart. I take a bunch of medicine. I was seeing a cardiologist. I forgot all about that. And I'm not saying that I had this moment where I prayed for healing and God miraculously healed me, but I had this journey of healing where I just trusted along the way. And I genuinely forgot that God did that. Right? I forgot about that. Every now and then when I have to fill out a medical form, like any history with the heart, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that whole heart thing. Everything's ship-shape now, though. Don't want to talk about it. Don't tell my therapist. Right? And I've shared this story before when my son was very young. When he was a tiny, I would split time with his biological mom, and he was over there some of the time and with me some of the time. And I would always pray that somehow God would just multiply that time in his heart and in my heart, right? If I couldn't be with him full time, that it would feel like that in his heart and in my heart. I forgot that God did that. Some of the darker times in my life and the darker times in the lives of the people around me, we collectively lean on each other and lean on God. And sometimes I've just forgotten all the things that God has done in the people around me, in the faith of the people around me, through the people around me. And it's so fun to remember, because it really gives me hope for what's to come. It really gives me hope for what can be next. If God can do this here, why can't he do it again? Why wouldn't he? It made me think, I'm a big analogy person. And something that is, like, to me, fascinating and also a little, I don't know if scary is the right word. It's not scary, but it's the ocean. It's like, it's vast, it's huge. There's something beautiful about it. There's something mesmerizing about it, but just the depths of it and the wideness of it. And it got me thinking of, like, pirate ships, or any kind of ship with a sail, I guess. Anybody ever sailed before? No? Okay. I have not either, but I've seen movies. And it got me thinking, when a ship is pointed in a direction, right, wherever the heading is, and you don't have an engine, all you have is the sails. You have to find a heading, you have to know, and you have to catch the wind, right? And it got me thinking, these, like, things that have happened in our life, these things that we have grown, like, we've got our heading, we're heading in a direction, but we're not quite there yet. But this wind behind us, this thing that's going to carry us there, is all of the progress that we have made. It's what's giving us the strength. It's what's giving us the hope. It's what's giving us the fuel to move forward. That's how we can move forward, because of the growth. You see what I'm saying? We can move forward because of what has happened to us. And each thing that happens to us along the way gives us more fuel, more hope for what is to come. That's what I want for you. That's what I want for me. I want to be able to remember what God has done so I can look at the future and be hopeful, not look at the future and say, are we there yet? But to look at the future and say, I do have places I want to be. I do have someone I want to grow into. I do have changes I want to make in my life. I do have growth that I want to experience. But just because those things haven't manifested yet, I'm not going to let that blind me. I'm not going to let that make me forget what has happened, what has been done, where I have come from. In many ways, we're going to do baptism here in an hour or so. That's another cool thing about baptism, especially river baptism, is we get to use it as a reminder of what God has done. In fact, baptism itself is a reminder of what God has done. We go down in the water and we come back up. Now, does anything change in the water? Most of the time, no. Sometimes it does. Sometimes people experience things. But it's meant to represent something that God has done. You see what I'm saying? Something that God has done already within you. Something that God has done, that you have been changed. And so we do river baptism so we don't forget. So we don't forget what God has done. So we can look back and remember the baptism. I remember when I got water baptized, it was not in a river, it was in a horse trough. That's how we did things in New Braunfels, Texas. Well, fill up that horse trough. And I remember I was one of however many people, and I get in and they heated up the water. Water was nice and warm. It will not be warm today. If we all pray hard enough, maybe. But I remember getting down the water, coming back up, and giving everybody around me just the wettest hug possible. I can remember. That was 20 years ago, and I can remember. And if God was working on me then, how much more is there for me and him to do in my faith? If God has been working on you, how much more is there for him and you to complete, to get? Are you there yet? I don't know. Where? Because you know where you are right now? You are there. You where you are right now. And I know this is true for you. I promise this is true for you. Where you are right now, you 10 years ago would have been very impressed. You'd be very impressed with where you are right now. Can you imagine what the future can hold for you? If you could close your eyes for a moment and bow your heads, I want to pray for you today. God, thank you so much for the time that we have together. God, we're grateful for what you have done. For what you have done for humanity, for what you have done for us, for what you have done for our family, for what you have done for this church, for what you have done in each of our hearts. God, I pray that we would remember who you have been, remember what you have done. I pray that we would let that fuel us for the future, that we would let that bring us hope for what is to come. We thank you for that, and we pray that in your name. Amen.
Y'all, thanks so much for joining us today at The Heart. To find out what is next for you in your journey of faith, I want to invite you to go to theheart.church/next, see what's in store for you, get in touch with us. We would love to be able to connect with you and see how we can partner with you in your journey. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.